Welcome to the James Hush Show. At the James Hush Show, we explore the intersection of technology, art, and business to uncover new thoughts and opportunities that'll help you lead a more fun and fulfilling life and career. And today, I'm personally really excited. This is a special guest, Alexander. Alex is the school director at LTL Language School, a private school chain teaching Chinese and other Asian languages, including Korean, Japanese, and Vietnamese in several locations in Asia, as well as online through its Flexi Classes platform. Alex was in charge of opening several of the school locations and is himself a big language learning enthusiast, having studied many languages throughout the years, including Chinese, Japanese, various European languages, as well as lesser-known dialects such as Hokkien and Shanghainese. Did I say that right? Hokkien?
It's actually called Hokkien, or like, for
Hokkien.
example, in Taiwan, they call it Taiwanese dialect.
Like, all in all, I just think that's super, super cool. So I personally wanted to bring you on and have a conversation with you because I've been into learning languages myself. And compared to my friends, I'm like super into learning languages. But compared to you, I'm like amateur level. So first, let's kind of talk about what is LTL and what makes it different than like learning language on your own on another online platform, or maybe like learning from a university or something like that.
So LTL, in its most basic sense, it's a language school, or originally started off as a Chinese language school based on immersion. That was the whole point of it. So the acronyms of LTL is live the language, because our motto is that if you want to learn the language, you need to live the language. So for example, when we started in Beijing back then, we started with, aside from doing the full-time programs for 4 hours a day, 6 hours a day, stuff like that, there was also a big emphasis on immersion in terms of, for example, living in homestays. So a lot of our students, in fact, the majority, they used to live in a homestay, in a Chinese homestay, where they would have dinner and breakfast with the family, and then they would come to the class and study a few hours, hang out with their students, and then go back and hang out with the homestay again. So we started with that originally in Beijing, and then we opened immersion programs in smaller schools where there are no other foreigners. So for example, Chengde, where that went really big because there's no foreigners, there's no expats there. In fact, I
Can't
think
speak English in Chengde. There's no way.
yeah. I was there once. It's like really small. And in terms of Chinese standards, it's really small. In terms of other standards, it's still a big city and it's still developed and everything like that. But it's small by its own Chinese standards. So we organized a program there for people to go there, especially for that. And I think the only person that I ever heard that actually lives in Chengde, a foreigner, was some Israeli guy who contacted us about classes in Chengde because he was working there as a tour guide. And so we opened later other schools, including in Taipei, one in Shanghai, in Beihai, and other places. And then later, because of the originally we were planning to do that, but later because of the pandemic, we decided to push more forward with online classes in our Flexi Classes platform. So that's a specific platform that's for booking classes, and basically, so you create an account, and then through that account you get monthly credits and use them for booking the classes for really any time of the day. So that's why it's called Flexi Class. You can book and you can cancel and you can do whatever, and it's very, very convenient. So it's been quite successful for now.
Yeah, when I first started, so I've been learning Chinese for about 3 years, but the first 2 years were more like a hobby. And the last 6 or 7 weeks, I've been going through LTL doing 4 hours a day. So it's like pretty much full-time job. And I really liked when I first started, I was booking online classes with another online learning platform because I didn't know about LTL. And I really liked, like, if I tell everyone who's interested in learning language, I actually was just talking to someone who was like acquaintances with, and he's like, oh, it's so cool that you're learning Chinese. I've always wanted to like move to Quebec because in Canada we have to learn French for 10 years, but nobody learns it. I'm convinced the French teachers in Canada are like 2 lessons ahead of the kids. Like I'm pretty sure most of them can't even speak French themselves. So you spend like 10 years trying to learn French in Canada, but nobody ever really learns it. So he said, oh, I'm really jealous that you're learning Chinese right now. I've always fantasized about moving to Quebec and learning French. And I told him, like, just get a teacher. just like find an online platform and get a teacher. If you don't really fit with them after 1 or 2 lessons, just find another one. And if you don't fit with that one, by the time you get to the 3rd teacher, you're going to find someone who fits.
Yeah. That's the thing with a lot of people where it's both with languages and with general other skills. So everyone wants to, like learn the guitar or go to the
Yeah.
gym or learn like programming language, stuff like that. And they think like, oh, it's a commitment of time. And so I'll do it when I have time, but they never find the time to do it. So the idea is if you want to learn a skill, you need to start now, even if it's a small thing. So
Yeah.
for example, in your case, you're doing it more intensively now with the 4 hours per day immersion program. So a more immersive, more intense program, but it doesn't have to be like, it doesn't have to
Yeah.
start like that. So you can start with 5 minutes a day of just reviewing stuff, which later increases. So it's in your case, it starts small and then suddenly increase because you find some kind of both time and enthusiasm for it more than you had previously.
Yeah, and I'm so glad I at least started 2 years ago before I moved to Taiwan, because originally I thought, I'm like, oh, maybe one day I'll go to like Shanghai or Beijing. So I was learning all simplified.
Mm-hmm.
But even though I was doing that, at least when I showed up, landed in the airport, and I knew I had to get a cell phone SIM card. And at least I knew when I heard blah, 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 shoji, blah, 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 shoji, I was like, okay, cell phone. Cell phone's over here. And then like just that alone was just worth all the time, because I remember when I first started learning, it took me like 3 months before my mouth just stopped hurting. Like, because when you're learning a new language, there's these new sounds, and like my jaw would just hurt. Like after doing it, it was like so weird, and it took me at least like 6-ish months before I could. Because originally, as a Westerner, when you're listening to Chinese, it just sounds like sounds, and your
Mm-hmm.
brain is thinking like there's no, like, this isn't a language. This is just sounds. It took me
Yeah.
just 6 months to get there. So at least when I got to Taiwan, it was no longer like a process of learning how to move my tongue to say certain sounds or learning how to hear the difference in the tones. I could hear the difference in the tones. I could repeat anything anyone said. But it turned more into like learning vocabulary and grinding through that, and learning slash relearning how to read and write. Because at the beginning of this, and I'm sure you've run into this before with other students, but I had
Mm-hmm.
the attitude, and I wish I didn't have this attitude, but when I first started out, I said, oh, I just want to learn how to speak. I don't really need to learn how to read. Oh, writing's a waste of time. I just want to learn how to speak. And then finally, when I moved here to Taiwan and realized, oh, not only is speaking's important, but if you can't understand what the person is telling you, it doesn't matter how much you can speak, because you won't know how to answer
Mm-hmm.
the question. Also,
Yeah.
if you want to exist in the world, you really do take reading for granted until you can't read anymore. And then you realize, like, just walking down the street, I didn't know until I looked in the store window. I don't know if it's a grocery store or
Mm-hmm.
a furniture store or anything like that.
Yeah.
Um, so is that pretty common for you? Have you found like students who come to LTL and say things like, uh, I just want to learn how to speak? And do you generally advise people to like learn all three, or what's your thoughts on that?
So that's quite a common mistake that a lot of people make. So I obviously it's not a completely mistake because everyone studies based on their own aims, right? So if your aim
Yeah.
is to only speak and whatnot, speak with your family and stuff like that, so that doesn't matter. So then you can learn only reading, only speaking. But the problem is there that a lot of people, so when they start with a small aim like that, for example, survival changes or whatnot. They later it grows into the more you succeed in it, the more you get excited, the more you want to learn. But the problem with that is that if you want to reach fluency, then you won't be able to do it without being able to at least read the basics, because at
Yeah.
later points when you reach a higher level, all the textbooks material, all the study materials, unless you specifically search out a teacher who does exactly as you want to do it, they will all assume that you at least know to how to read something. So that's one thing. Another thing, obviously, is if you're located in the location, so in China or in Taiwan or in Singapore or whatnot, it's written in Chinese, then you can't really, be asking everyone on the street, what does this say? What does that say? And so regarding your other point, because you mentioned also that speaking but not understanding what other people are saying, that's a point of, like practicing listening comprehension. And one thing that so I want to mention that because you mentioned the whole thing about shoji and stuff like that. So I often talk about a situation that's called or a thing that's called emotional charge, which means that so when you start learning a language, any language, not just Chinese, but also especially Asian languages where you are not that familiar with the words, when you start learning all the vocabulary, that all sounds pretty much the same to you. So you can't really differentiate between like the first few words that you study and the words that you later studied. And many of those you later forget, and you cannot recall them until a point where you, for example, so you learn, like for example, you learn the word shoji, blah blah blah, and then some time passed, and then suddenly you hear blah 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 shoji, and you're like, yeah, I know that word. And that kind of emotional charge helps you really remember the language. So I remember a good example that I have, which I remember till the end of my days pretty much, is so when I was in 2010, I was studying in China in a university, and I was hanging out with a friend of mine, and we were in Wangfujing just hanging out and talking about, for some reason, about Japan. And I was telling at that point that that Japan, even though its economy has fallen a bit since the 80s and stuff like that, is still a force to be reckoned with, especially compared with China back in 2010. And that friend of mine, so she's a Chinese girl, so she told me, "shows the loto bimada." So a skinny camel is bigger than a horse. And I remember that I learned that word in Chinese pod long time ago, but I never actually thought about it until she told me that. I'm like, yeah, I know that word. I know that idiom. And then since then, I remember both that story and the idiom. And I pretty much won't ever forget it because I had that kind of emotional charge where I got excited, either excited about a word that I know or frustrated because I don't remember the word.
That definitely 1,000% helps learning this vocabulary. And the good slash bad news is positive emotional charge is good, but I think even better for just pure remembering, having a negative experience will cause you to remember so hard. Like I remember when I first came here, I'd learned Bing and I learned Re, so I knew cold and I knew hot. Like I had learned it, but it wasn't like in the top of mind. I remember one of the first times trying to order a coffee in Taiwan. And this is common anytime you're starting to learn a foreign language, you're trying to order food, you just show up and you're just hoping that they'll give you anything. It's like, I'm just thirsty and hungry, basically whatever they give. So usually you learn the word for yes, and you can usually guess your way through the conversation and they'll give you something. And so I just wanted a small hot coffee, like a small coffee. And in America and British culture and Canadian culture, the default coffee you get is a hot black coffee. And I was like, you know what? I'm happy with it. I'll just do this. And I came to Taiwan and just kept saying doi, 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 kept saying yes in the conversation. And they handed me a coffee with a bunch of ice in it in the middle of winter. And I was just so sad. I was like, oh no, like the default here is iced coffee. And so now I always remember Bing is ice, Re is hot, because I'm like, I always want a hot coffee. And that's like a very stereotypical foreigner thing to want, is hot coffee here, because my Taiwanese girlfriend, she rarely drinks hot coffee. She always has it with ice. And so it's one of those things. That emotional charge helps a lot. And shoji is another good example. I'll never forget that, because when I first was learning that word, that was one of the first probably 50 or so words I learned through my Chinese teacher when I first started. And it, honest to God, it took me about 5 lessons before. At every lesson, she'd be like, "这是什么?" And she told up the phone. I'm like, 1 sec. I studied this. I know this.
Yeah, so that's a bit of a shame with generally learning vocabulary and learning a language, that you cannot really build it perfectly to the point where, okay, so I'll forget this at this time. And so with spaced repetition like Anki, it kind of helps, but it's still a lot of the vocabulary that you actually learn, that you remember easily, and those that you don't remember so easily, that is completely based on, well, probably not complete randomness, but something more neurological that we do not have complete understanding of just yet. So you can't really, so I learned 10,000 words, I will remember all 10,000 words. That's just not realistic, and that's all right. So so when you learn a language, you just basically expose yourself to as much as possible of that. You create a salad, and then slowly you make order inside it.
And that's probably why it's so easy to remember like curse words and stuff like that, because it's just,
that's a huge emotional charge. Yeah, like you get excited from that all immediately.
I remember I learned a couple of those. And then I had a roommate back in Los Angeles, originally from Hubei in China. And
Mhm.
I remember for like 3 days, I was just cursing at him. And then one day he's like, honestly, man, can you just please stop doing that? And he was like very serious. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. I was first thing I laughing. I felt like a 5-year-old who just learned how to swear. But it was all in good fun. Uh, so what was the first like walk me through because my experience was in Canada, you're forced to learn French for 9 years. But I thought like, you know what? I wanna like let's learn French. I'm like, let's keep going. I'm already in high school anyway. I might as well spend an hour a day or whatever the class is. I'll learn something. I'm genuinely interested in learning French. So I took grade 10 French. And it was
Mhm.
one of the hardest classes I ever took in my life. It was the very first class I ever took where I had no idea what was going on. And then at that point, I just dropped out after grade 10 French. So that like I'll just never learn. I just can't learn languages, period. Uh, can you walk me through your experience of what's the first kind of foreign language you learned and what was your experience going through learning that and why did you pick up that one?
So there's one that I just did out of fun, and one that I was actually studying in high school. And both of them, I eventually had to restart. So the one that I studied in high school because I'm from Israel was Arabic. That was in seventh until ninth grade. So we had 3 years of Arabic. I remember back then I was quite good at it. I wasn't like back then I wasn't like really enthusiastic about languages or whatnot, but I was just like so I got it, and so I was studying that for 3 years and was getting good grades and whatnot. But eventually, so after like a year 10 or whatnot, basically everything got forgotten. And that's
Mm.
just a general thing about schools where you learn you basically focus on grammar and stuff like that, and you don't actually. First of all, at that age, you don't necessarily always are interested in that because it's just another class or so on,
Hmm.
and also you don't get exposed to it outside of just that one class. So when I was studying Arabic, I wasn't like watching Arabic cartoons
No.
or TV series or whatnot. I was just like it was just one other class. The one language that I did have an actual genuine interest, but it was as a child was when I was so. My parents are both zoologists, so they are professors of zoology, and they used to have a lot of interns come from different kind of countries, like to study under them and practice and whatnot. And one of them was a guy from Kenya, Moses, I think was his name, and he arrived when I was like 9 or whatever. And back then I was like without even thinking about, I was kind of excited about, oh my, so he's from another country and blah blah, and he has like this mysterious language that I never heard, know nothing about. And I just got interested in that, and I was asking him stuff about it until he actually went ahead and created like a list of vocabulary for me to learn. Thankfully, with Swahili, so he was
Oh.
teaching me. He was showing me Swahili. With that, there's like it's Latin alphabet, right? So it's not
Oh, well, that's good.
and it's not like French where you have to like guess the pronunciation based on certain arbitrary rules that you get that you know after lots of exposure. So with that, it's quite straightforward. And so he taught me that he just showed me a list of vocabulary, blah blah, and gave it to me. And I was actually studying at home on the general side, just like learning the words and stuff like that, and learned one song that he taught me and stuff like that. So that was my first exposure to a language that I was kind of, wow, that's interesting. But the one that I actually started like seriously studying, and that one I reached fluency, was Japanese. So that was
Hmm.
in when I was 17 years old, and friends of mine introduced me to anime, of course, and specifically to Naruto. And
Hmm.
then because they were like watching anime for a long time, so they already knew a bunch of vocabulary. And I was like, every time I heard them say "doste" or "nande" or whatever, and I was like, "Oh my god, you speak Japanese!" And I got really excited about it, and found by, I think, accident back then, found Pimsleur, so
Hmm.
the study program, and started studying Japanese through it. And then later I just didn't stop, found more materials, and as I said, created a salad and then put order in it. So Japanese was the one that actually worked out. So I'm fluent in Japanese now.
So for Japanese, did you take classes or did you watch like all the Naruto? Like, what was the
Oh,
learning like for that?
well, just watching anime would not really work out for learning a language
Yeah,
unless
I
you're
know.
like actually, well, stop frame by frame and stuff like that. But so I did a bunch of stuff. So I started with Pimsleur, then I studied with Japanese Pod 101, and I also took classes back then in Israel. So in my small hometown there, there was one Japanese woman who was there. So she was, because she was among the only, so I think she and another guy were the only Japanese in my hometown. So I got connected with her and asked her to basically teach me or to practice with me and stuff like that. And then she did that. So we did that for like a few months, and then later I went to another city close by to study every so often, and then later added more and more stuff. So it was a lot of different kind of things that I did together.
Yeah. The key thing I've noticed with anyone learning languages is they actually studied something. They actually studied.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny when you put it down, it's actually like learning a language is super simple, but getting a six pack at the gym is also incredibly simple. Like you just have to get a six pack, all you have to do is eat less and work out more. And then you lower the calories down and you lift heavier weights and you'll eventually get a six pack. And I found for learning language, it's pretty quote unquote simple too. If you learn 100,000 words, you'll probably know the language kind of thing. But it takes, just because something is simple doesn't mean it's easy. That's for sure. And so having, like, for example, I have a personal trainer at the gym for the same reason I have a Chinese teacher, is not only it's not so much getting the information, because figuring out the information for working out is pretty simple. Eat less, work out more. Figuring out the information for Chinese is actually pretty simple too. There's a ton of free resources. But I found that having the teacher, having someone not only to help give you the information, but help give you it in the right order. And I think number one for me personally is having that accountability. Like I know at 9 o'clock in the morning, Tammy or Celine is waiting for me. And I would feel so bad if I'm late and they're just sitting there by themselves with their phone. On top of that, I've also already paid for it too. And so just having that, and then being in that environment, having a teacher means that if someone texts me, I'm not pulling up my phone because that's incredibly rude, obviously. If I get discouraged on something, I'm not going to go watch a YouTube video and get distracted because there's a person there. So just like that alone has been a huge game changer for me. For the languages, are there any languages you're actively learning now, or are you focused more on just doing LTL stuff?
Well, so I am still studying a lot of languages, and so my point is that I don't really do those kind of. So ideally, if I have like an option for an immersion program, stuff like that, I'd love to do it and stuff like that. But while I am here working and stuff like that, so I am putting pretty much as much time as I can in my languages. But because I have a lot of them, so I have to cut them up. So I am currently involved I think previously in a previous conversation we also mentioned this. I'm currently involved in 35 languages, so that's including everything. That's including languages that I didn't mention it. Okay, so that includes languages that I speak from birth. So Hebrew, English, and Russian, but and as well as languages that I'm fluent in, like Chinese and Japanese, because there's always stuff to learn. It's interesting. So I learn idioms in Chinese and whatnot, and dialects and stuff like that, and other languages that going back to my point that I made previously, that so I will always, so if I continue now down this path, I will always say, oh, one day I want to learn Irish, or one day I want to learn Mongolian, or one day whatever. But that one day will never come. So it's better to just start immediately. And then I put less time in Irish or Mongolian or whatever, and I put more time in another one, and that's all right, because I'm not hurrying anywhere. With the languages that I want to speak well by a certain time, I already reached that point. So with Japanese, with German, with Chinese, I'm already at a good level. With other languages, so I'm all right with it taking me 10 years plus to study that. And that's going back to the point of like, languages are not, so unless it's a language like Hungarian or Finnish with a lot of cases and stuff like that, languages are not, their grammar and vocabulary is not something that it's hard to understand. It's relatively easy to understand, but the point is that you start, and then you need to be all right with the fact that it will take you a long time to reach your results and stuff, like doing like that with a teacher. So that's the point of accountability that you mentioned. So that's also an important point, because a lot of people give up in the middle. And when I say give up, I mean that they completely stop doing anything with the language. But
Hmm.
if you, for example, if you study 5 minutes a day, that's still all right. You don't have to put
Yeah.
like 1 hour every day or 2 hours every day and like screw yourself up completely and be dead by the time you're done. Obviously, if you want to reach uh, better results faster, you want to learn the language faster, you need to put more time. But even if you don't, just start with it, do your 5 minutes and blah blah, and that will automatically increase. Same point as you mentioned with the gym. So you go with the same mindset. I'll just go for 5 minutes, and then that 5 minutes becomes an hour. Or when I was in Shanghai living there, I specifically hired a gym instructor, a private instructor,
Hmm.
and for 3 times a day, and I immediately put all my money into there. So I booked the
Yeah.
maximum amount of hours and said like, here you go, this is the money and blah blah. And thankfully that gym was right next door to my office, so I was
Hmm.
going after work immediately there. And same idea. I won't be i, I won't be canceling if I know a person is waiting for me there.
Yeah. Same way. And it's the little tiny things. The thinking long term is a big one, not only just for language learning, but for life in general. Anything you want to do in business, any goal you have. Like, if you want to get rich, the quickest I've ever seen someone get rich is about 9 years.
Okay.
So and the quickest I've seen anyone learn Chinese, even like the those like YouTubers, even them,
Hmm.
like I haven't met a single, like I've seen a couple YouTubers say things like, oh, I've learned Spanish in 3 months or French in 2 months, but you don't see a single YouTube video of someone like, I learned Chinese in a month. Like there's no one even is pretending that it's going to take that short amount of time. Um, and using your gym example, like making sure you book a gym that's close to your work and making sure that you do that is the equivalent of like making sure you just uninstall Instagram on your phone and
Yeah,
put
yeah.
Anki on the front screen.
Hmm.
Like I did that a few months ago. I've actually about 6 months ago, I uninstalled all the social media and just put Anki on my home screen. And you look at
Hmm.
my Anki stats, and I've studied Anki way more than that because I've removed the friction of studying and increased the friction of like looking at videos on YouTube. So
Hmm.
I'll be on the subway in Taipei and pull up my phone, and now my habit is just to open Anki because it's on the home screen. So I'm like, oh,
Yeah,
I may
it's
as
like
well.
so every we kind of get used to just grabbing our phone for no reason, even if not on the subway waiting or whatnot. You're just walking and you're like, oh, where's my phone? Here's my phone, and then basically you just click around, and the first thing that comes up, you click it. So if it's Anki or other kind of more stuff that are more productive, obviously. So if you're really into Reddit or Instagram, whatever, your of course your own life,
Yeah,
you
that's
decide
okay
what you
too.
want to do. But if your aim is to reach a certain goal, that's also a convenient thing. So one thing that a colleague of mine used to do, and he often recommends people to do, for example, for studying Chinese, is to change the phone settings to Chinese, because then you're kind of forced to.
I did
Okay.
that with Spanish a while ago, and it was
Mhm.
super frustrating in Spanish, and I had to change it back. I had to change it back. I've been thinking about changing my phone to Chinese probably for 3 years now. I
Okay.
think I did it once for. I know. I remember I did it once for about 3 minutes, and then I had to go to my Chinese roommate and say, like, "Man, I can't even. I don't even know how to change this back." Maybe that'll be my February goal: is just change it and just deal with it. But
No,
yeah, that
to,
would
to be
100%
to be
work.
fair, I didn't do it, and my phone is still written all in English because convenience is more important for me. Because again, the point here is not to pain through a language. The point is
Yeah.
the exact opposite, to make it as easy to access so that you do it for a long time. So the same thing as where
Hmm.
you put like Anki on the front page, so that you don't need to look it up on like search it or like look it up through it. It's just there. So you click it. It's easier to click Anki than it is to find Instagram, so to say.
Yeah. Have you ever been when you were learning a language? Have you ever gotten like discouraged while learning a language?
So I get both encouraged and discouraged when I watch other people speak the language that I takes me a while to learn. Obviously, so different kind of situations. So a lot of people. So if a person that I'm speaking to is he actually spent time, let's say, in France and speaks French really fluently and spent their time like 10 years. I would still get a bit discouraged, even though I didn't do exactly that. But that's all right. That's someone to look up to for that, and that kind of motivates me. For other kind of frustrations, so again, it's the same point of like what kind of level I reached in a certain time, which is a kind of thinking that I want to do less of because I don't want to focus on how much time it takes to learn language, but
Yeah.
rather the process itself that I enjoy. So, for example, I do a lot of stuff with Anki, and I do it with sentences. So I run through sentences in, let's say, Tagalog is one of my newer languages, and I don't understand most things there, but I catch a word here, a word there, and I'm like, oh yeah, that one I saw from here, and that one I saw from here, and recognizing those patterns is what I enjoy. So I'm happy to do it more and more, and to do it, for 10 years.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because I remember I got discouraged using Anki a couple of years ago, and looking back on it, I should have just calmed down because it's more important that you study than if you study like perfectly. I found
Correct.
it's more important that
Correct.
you actually like use Anki or use whatever resource and try something than it is to be like, oh, I'm not doing it perfect. I'm just gonna stop because, uh, like you said, even if you're going through like flashcards with sentences and you're only understanding 10% of the sentence, what else were you going to do during that time anyway? You're already on the
Yeah,
subway.
exactly.
You're just going to
Mhm.
go on Instagram. And so that's
Yeah,
bringing
so
you
it's
closer to
it's
the
all right.
goal.
If you put like 5 minutes, so there was, I saw on Reddit, there was a guy who, because so apparently on Anki you can also add an add-on that counts streaks, similar to how Duolingo does it. So as long as
Yeah.
you did like your Anki today,
One
your
card.
streak continues. Yeah, exactly. So he said that he reached like 11:59, then he saw that his streak is about to finish, so he quickly put one card, studied one card, and that's all right.
Yeah.
That's no problem. Obviously, better if you do more, but it's all right if you put even the smallest amount of time, because that time will increase as long as you continue doing it.
The streak really helps. I gotta be honest. I lost my streak 6 days ago. I don't know how,
On
but
Duolingo, or
I had a 5 month Anki streak because I have the same add-on.
uh,
I had a 5 month Anki streak, and for some reason, I just forgot to do it one day, and I was like, oh. But now I'm back. I'm 6 day streak now, so I'm back on the horse. But that streak is pretty. It's such a small thing, but it was pretty motivating for me, and it still is. And having streaks, having anything to like just encourage me that's the absolute main thing because you just got to keep
mhm.
going.
So specifically
Oh
for
yeah.
all my habits, for studying languages, for listening to audiobooks, for doing other stuff, I have a habit tracker specifically to click through every day.
I think part of it too is the way the school system's kind of set up, or way education is like what most people's experience of education is going to grade school and high school or university.
Hmm.
And it's all about just passing the test. And it's
Correct.
like nothing you really learn in school takes more than a semester to learn. Everyone's broke up in semesters. And if you can't learn it that semester, a lot of you just kind of lean on the excuse of like, oh, maybe I'm just not good at math. Maybe I'm just
Hmm.
not good at learning languages. So one of the nice things about not only like learning languages, but I also play guitar. Learning guitar was the same way too. Was it really taught me like if you just keep going, if
Yeah.
you just got to keep going, and you just keep showing up, and it takes more than a semester. You do get results. And so it's nice to look back because if I try to measure, quote unquote, measure how much I've progressed in Chinese over a day or over a week or over a month,
Hmm.
I would feel really discouraged. But whenever
Yeah.
now,
Correct.
if I think back to a year ago when I landed here, I couldn't read anything, couldn't write, and they gave me iced coffee, like I've
Hmm.
like 10x. So it's the big thing on any language learning in general is like you said, you just gotta keep on going, try not to get, and just try your best not to get discouraged. What helps me too is remembering why I'm learning the language. So
Hmm.
now that I'm living in Taiwan, the why is a lot stronger because I actually really like Taipei. I have a strong feeling I'm gonna stay here long term. So now my why is a lot stronger, so I'm gonna put more effort into it. Uh, and another one that's a big one too is I'm meeting my girlfriend's parents on Chinese New Year in a couple
Yeah.
weeks, and her
Ooh.
mom doesn't speak any English, and so you bet your butt I've been studying so much. I've been studying so much more for that, and just having those little goals really, really helps. Like remembering why you're learning it. So maybe you're learning Japanese because you want to be able to watch Naruto without subtitles. Like that's a good goal to have. And for that kind of goal, you can change your studying habits depending on what it is. Versus
Mm.
if your goal is, I want to learn English so I can move from my country to America and work as an engineer because I want to bring my family out of poverty, let's say, then
Mhm.
yeah, you'll want to study a lot harder than I want to watch Naruto without subtitles, and that's okay.
Yeah.
It's different goals and require a different amount of effort.
There are some kind of advantages that you don't actually think about when you start with this that happen in the middle. So for example, so when I was like back in Israel and I would from time to time like download a movie or whatnot, and then I found out, oh crap, that movie is dubbed into French. Well, okay, then I'll watch it in French, whatever.
Oh,
But
that's
those
nice.
kind of things happen, and they're like, okay, fine. So I'll watch it in French, I'll watch it in German, who cares?
Oh, that's a nice one too. Or like I remember learning when I was learning Spanish for a couple months because my parents retired to Spain. I was going to go visit them, and
Mhm.
we are going through some Spanish vocabulary. I'm like, oh, so many of these words are the same as French. The 10 years of French in Canada, like
Mhm.
some of these are clicking through.
Mhm.
It's little things like that help a lot. Or just yeah, being able to order food in Asia, big one. Like the more vocabulary now I can read about 40% of the menu in Taiwan because in Taiwan, most of
Mhm.
the menus have no photos. That was a big
Mhm.
shocker. That was a big culture shock for me because moving to
Okay.
Taiwan, I figured, well, I know how to point, I know how to count, so I should be able to order whatever. And I
Mhm.
remember the first restaurant I came here, it was just all text. I was like, no.
Yeah.
But now I can
You
at least
memorize
read.
the exact words. You memorize the keywords. So what is
Yeah.
pork? What is beef? What is meat?
Yeah.
What is vegetable?
Now I know pork, beef, noodle, soup,
Mhm.
rice. I'm like, okay,
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
There we go.
That's all you need. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then thankfully with those kind of so there is this kind of stereotype about Chinese food that Chinese food has like really flowery names like the duck flies over the mountain or whatever. But actually most the Chinese food or it's like same in Taiwan, most Taiwanese food is just rice with pork and vegetable. And then
Beef
so
noodle
basically as long
soup.
as you know those words, you know exactly what is inside it, exactly what dish
Yeah.
it is.
Beef noodle soup. Like, how do you say
Exactly.
beef noodle soup in Chinese? It's literally the word beef noodle soup. It's like,
Yeah,
okay.
exactly.
I remember growing up too, like, we would go to like Chinese, I use that in quotes because Chinese food in Canada is not the same thing as here. And I remember all the menus were like seemingly really simple words, like it was like beef noodle soup or something like that. And then as I learned Chinese, I was like, oh, there's actually that's just how the language is. That's why everything is that way. I'm like, oh, so it's you learn little. It's nice to learn those little things. It helps a lot when learning the culture. So, is there any like apps or resources or anything that you've come across, like learning Chinese or learning any other languages that you think are like really, really cool and worth mentioning?
Well, so okay, first of all, obviously our own Flexi Classes is a very
Yeah.
good system that I think is quite revolutionary in the sense that it's not common to see online programs where you can actually study in a group together. A lot of the other stuff like I talk you whatnot, you so basically you book a teacher and you study one on one with the teacher. But not everyone wants that. A lot of people want like a social environment, and this is something that Flexi Classes can do because we can put people together in groups, and that works out quite well. So that's one thing that because also it's with a live teacher, so it can't really be replaced with anything else
No.
similar. So that's one thing. Another thing that I used to really be big on at the time was podcasts. So I used to study Chinese through Chinese pod, Japanese pod 101, French pod and Spanish pod when they exist. I think they pretty much are like they don't exist anymore, but there's other versions of that. So that was quite big for me because I enjoy like basically putting on my earphones and just going around and listening to content and stuff like that. I do the same with Anki. So I have an add-on that is an auto advance. So I click auto advance and I lock my phone or lock the screen, and then I just walk around and listen to it endlessly. And I enjoyed that. But that's obviously that's how I enjoy learning the language. Doesn't mean that everyone else does the same thing. So a lot of people, for example, they enjoy doing what I think Fluent U has that option where you have subtitles in both Chinese and English together
Mm.
while you're watching a movie or video or whatever. So some people like that. Or a friend of mine, what he did back then, so he was watching a Japanese drama, a Japanese TV series, and so he was watching it and stopping frame by frame and learning what each sentence is, and then he would put it on his. So for example, he watched the first episode, and then he would put that first episode, only the MP3 part, on his media player and just listen to it throughout the whole day
Mm.
for like a week or 2 weeks and stuff like that until he was very convenient with that one episode, and then he would go to the next episode. So that's also a thing that's related to emotional charge, because if you watch a series that you know and you like, and then you rewatch it or you re-listen to it in a different language, as long as you have a general understanding of that language, then you learn it much faster and much easier, and you enjoy it much more. So, for example, I have a playlist right now of the Last of Us video game.
Mm.
So the whole cutscene movie. So I downloaded it
Oh,
in Russian, and I cut it up into parts, and then I'm like just listening to it on Anki. It like randomly puts like in the order, but it randomly puts the based on SRS the parts, and I'm like replaying the game.
that's a really good idea. I know like I've heard that advice a lot, like listening, like finding stuff you like and listening to it. That's a big one. One of the unique ways, and because language learning is so personal for every different one of the unique ways I'm working on learning Chinese is I actually do English stand-up comedy 2 nights a
Hmm.
week in Taipei.
Hmm.
But I know, unsurprisingly, the
Hmm.
Chinese nights have way more people than the English
Hmm.
speaking nights do. So now I got like a nice goal. And I realized for a comedy set, you only need 5 minutes. You only need
Okay.
five. And you don't need to like respond to anyone. It's not like a conversation where you have to listen to the person and
Hmm.
respond. I just don't do any crowd work. Like
Hmm.
if I just don't do any crowd work, I could probably just convert my 5 minutes to Chinese, get
Hmm.
one of my comedian friends to read it with all the right pauses and stuff, record it, and listen to it. So I came up with that idea a week ago, and so I'm just starting. I'm hoping this week to kind of start doing that. So my first thought is like just take it, translate it, uh, through Google Translate. Have my girlfriend or one of my Chinese teachers help me like actually translate because Google Translate won't do any justice, and go through
Hmm.
that kind of process. And that's an example where if someone told me to write a 5 minute essay in Chinese, I would be like, oh, I really don't want to do this. But
Hmm.
because I have that very specific, unique goal, it's fun. And because it's fun, it means I'll do it. So it's like I've tricked myself to
Yeah.
do it. Versus if I was like teaching at a school, sure I could give that assignment to kids or adults and be like, this is a good way to learn Chinese. And it's technically true, but just because it's a good way for you doesn't mean it's a good way for anyone else. And so I
Exactly.
found like the
Exactly.
main thing is you just got to do something. You got to do absolutely something.
Hmm. And in your case, like with the comedy skits, that's also because though the material that you talk about is material that you yourself find also amusing. So when you
Yeah.
convert it into Chinese, it's amusing to you personally. So you enjoy the process itself. I do the same thing with, for example, languages that is harder to find resources in. So for example, Mongolian or Taiwanese when I was studying that, or Shanghainese or other dialects. So you don't really have that many resources there. So in those cases, and right now I'm learning online Sichuanese with a Sichuanese teacher. So I have a list of sentences of basic frequent high frequency English sentences, and then we translate them into Sichuanese. Or sometimes she or I find something that's really interesting or funny or whatnot, and we translate that sentence by sentence, and I review that on Anki. So, for example, memes and stuff like that, stuff that I find on TikTok or on Chinese Douyin, stuff like that, and we
Mm-hmm.
run through those. And I enjoy those because it's funny for me.
Yeah, that's like that's hardcore. I remember you telling me like because you learned like Taiwanese. Was it Taiwanese or another language that doesn't have any written form?
technically it has something, but
It's not really.
it's not set in stone.
Yeah, but you just casually mentioned it's like, yeah, there's not really a written form for this, so I just have to
Hmm.
like do this recording, and that just like I was like, oh my god, it makes me like every once in a while I'll like complain to myself about learning Chinese why it's hard, and then I just remember you saying like, oh yeah, I'm learning this language that doesn't really have a written form, and so like, shoot, like just shut.
Oh, that's all
Uh,
right for me because I'm just listening. So I'm all right with the with listening to stuff and then like learning through that. If I so with specifically in language with Taiwan, there's one aspect that's a bit annoying that I might one day get to it is the issue with Taiwan doesn't use pinyin, right? Taiwan uses bobomorpho, so that's their own kind of writing system. That's
yeah,
kind of weird. I mean, it has its own logic, and so Taiwanese people know it, but I never studied it. So that's some kind of writing system. The Taiwanese dialect also has something similar, but it's again not really set in stone. It's not really officialized or whatever, but it's a way of writing the language. But I personally don't think so. If this is not the way you use the language, because you're not going to be writing with people in
yeah.
Taiwanese in the thing, so unless this is a personal interest of yours, there's no real reason to learn it. So I'm all right with learning it through listening.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because it's almost like the goal isn't to learn the language. The goal is to do something else. And in order to do that other thing, you have to learn the language. So, like, one of my goals
Especially,
is
yeah.
to give a presentation in Chinese. And so the goal isn't because you can't actually learn a
Hmm.
language. Like it's not like grade 7 where it's like, oh, you get an A plus if you know this many words. There's no, like there are like there's are tests that kind of measure where you're at with a language, but that's not really the point. Like you don't learn the language to just learn it. You learn it because you want to talk to your mother-in-law. You learn it because
Hmm.
you want to watch this show without subtitles. You learn it because you want to give a presentation. You learn it because you want to go to the country. There's always another goal. So that's a really good point with learning something like Taiwanese. You're not learning it in order to I don't know, write business emails. You're learning it for another reason. Versus,
Yeah, yeah.
uh, I'm going to go more on the business side for Chinese, so I better learn how to read and write because every every business requires you to read. To my knowledge, I can't think of any sort of business that would want to hire someone who can't read. So it's
Yeah.
a
You
really
have a good
big one.
example of it with for example Mormons. So Mormons usually study, or Christians in general usually study languages really well, especially the
Mhm.
missionary type who want to, who want to convert people into Christianity. So they really know how to learn a language. And we had once, long time ago in Beijing, we had a Mormon student who also came to China basically to convert, which in itself is a bit of a political issue, but he like that was his thinking, and his Chinese was really, really good. So he was like really serious about studying it. So
Yeah,
those kind of motivations are also a very good thing. For me personally, I study language because I just enjoy the sound of the language, and I get excited about it. So for example, with Mongolian, so I was studying Mongolian originally because I really like death metal music, and
uh,
one of my favorite bands was an inner Mongolian band back in Beijing. So I was going to
yeah. I
Igofo.
know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, they got
Yeah.
the weird
So they,
instrument,
yeah,
right?
the matouqin, the how they call it, the
Mhm.
horse head fiddle, and they used to sing in half Chinese and half in Mongolian. I was like, holy shit! If I can speak Mongolian, I'll be totally metal.
Yeah, yeah,
So I
exactly.
started.
And that's part of the reason I want to start learning some like Taiwanese phrases because
Hmm.
what my main reason for learning Chinese is to like build relationships in Taiwan. And if you're like, especially if you're like Canadian British person and you can speak Chinese really well, people are like, "Whoa, that's cool. Let me be your friend." Like that's a big one.
Yeah,
And
but if you speak a dialect,
the
then they're
level
gonna
beyond
lose
that
their
is
minds.
yeah, if I can do that, their mind's already lost. And then I throw in some
Hmm.
like really local Taiwanese phrase in there too. They'll be like, oh, and then they'll
Hmm.
just buy me a round of drinks. Like there's
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's like getting that connection because I feel something similar like when I meet someone who's like from Canada or someone from England because my parents are British, and so if they're from England, there's some just cultural references they know, especially like sarcasm. Like we can be like sarcastic to each other. We're like the only two people who understand it, and then it really helps. So I'm trying to do the same thing with learning Chinese. Is like learning those like super super local things make a big difference, like in
like
relationships.
slang or the dialect or stuff that people are, so to say, in the know. So it's usually locals who are in the know, but if a foreigner is in the know with that, people really get excited about it. And it's not just with Chinese as a language. Mandarin is slowly becoming more commonplace. So it's not it's still a big deal in many
Yeah.
places, but not as big of a deal as it used to be. And
Hmm.
so now, so if you speak a dialect or if you speak like languages that are less commonly studied, so, for example, Swedish or Norwegian or Hebrew, for example, then people who are locals of who speak that language natively, they get super excited, like, "Holy shit, you speak my language!" They don't think about it
Yeah.
like it's like my language or whatever, but they get excited because it's really unique and
Hmm.
really just a show of appreciation there. People like
Yeah, I was listening to a podcast from this guy named Tim Ferriss, who wrote a book called The 4 Hour
the
Work
four
Week.
hour week, right?
Yeah, and he knows a couple different languages because he spent a year in Japan in high school, and he was saying that a lot of people think like, oh, I should just learn Chinese or I should just learn like Spanish because more people speak it. And he's like, no, it's like when you travel, he's like, learn like the obscure language of the place you're traveling because,
Mhm.
yeah, like you said, yes, people are like, oh, that's cool. You speak Chinese as a foreigner. That's neat. But it's like, oh, you speak Taiyu? Like, he's like, they will like absolutely positively lose their minds, which
Mhm.
I think that's just funny. And it's a really good way to make friends. I almost look at it like I'm just like how I invest time in my relationship with my friends and like with my girlfriend, I've looked at learning
Mhm.
Chinese as like I'm investing time with my relationship of like every Chinese speaking person in the world. Because
Mhm.
if you bump into someone, you can have like a conversation. I That's just great. They'll really appreciate it. Like a good example was my landlord came by to fix something, and I was actually able to talk to her for like 4 minutes. And she's like,
Mhm.
"Oh, like need a Zhongguan Henhouse. Like your Chinese is really good." Little did she know, if she talked to me for another minute, she'd realize that everything would fall apart.
Done.
Yes, the 5 minutes of Chinese I know, describing why I learned Chinese, why I came to Taiwan, and whether or not I have a girlfriend, and whether or not she's Taiwanese. Yes, I have that perfect. I have that absolutely perfect. But you start asking anything else, then it's done. But even just that was like really really encouraging.
I think there's like a situation that happens a lot with language learners in general, that because so learning, so you learn language, but speaking it and recalling words and stuff like that, it takes effort and you get tired and stuff like that. So when you learn a language and you're speaking with someone and someone gets excited and they want to speak back with you in the same language, so for example, because it's their native language, so you're kind of, on one sense, you're like, oh, thank you so much for speaking with me, like practicing with me the language, because other people might switch immediately to English. But on the other hand, I wish kind of you would stop because it's kind of hard for me. So I'm both thankful and like, oh, can you continue, but can you stop as well?
Yeah, there's definitely times where I'm just like there it's some days I'm like just I feel good. So for example, I'll book a haircut and I have a phone number for the barber, and then I always like go to Google Translate and I'll figure out all the Chinese I'll say in order to book a haircut, and I'll
Hmm.
think about what happens if they don't have this time.
Prepare.
This is how I'll prepare, and I'll prepare for a good 15 minutes for this 3 minute phone call. And then there's
Hmm.
other days where it's just like I just hand my phone to my girlfriend. I'm like, can you just please book a haircut for me? Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm just exhausted. So
Yeah, a lot,
it's
a lot of a lot of
it's good and
students who
bad.
study with us, they have that, like, one of their first experience when they come to, like, for an immersion program in China or in Taiwan or whatnot, is that they start, for example, they learn how to order food, right? So they learn all the words, blah blah blah, whatever, and they okay, memorize how to say this and this and this and blah blah, and they go to the store and they say, oh, I want this and this, and they ask them, oh, would you like sugar with it? And they're like, shit,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't learn that
Oh.
word. That did not appear in the textbook.
I remember the first time somebody asked for my membership card. I was like, you can't.
Okay,
Because I was crushed. Like, yeah, I want
why can't you
sugar.
follow my
Yeah, I want
textbook?
yeah, it's like, yeah, I want sugar. Yeah, I want half ice. And then they asked in Chinese, like, do you have a membership card? And I had no
Hmm.
idea what it was. And so I was like, oh, wait, what? And then I'd look at my girlfriend and she's like, oh, it's membership card. I'm like, they haven't asked me that before, but that's because I never got
Yeah,
to that
that's
level.
new.
Or what's another one that really screwed me up? Oh, in Taiwan, Zaiju, which is like the app to scan the
Oh, yeah, yeah,
receipt.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Hmm.
I'm like, wait, what? First, I'm like, then I had to ask about that. It's like, oh, that's like this app to scan the
Hmm.
receipt. And I'm like, wait, what? I'm like, what do you mean app to scan? I'm like, this is the first time I'm hearing about this. It's like, oh, it's for the lottery. I'm like, wait, lottery? I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. You have to explain this whole thing. It's like, oh, well,
Yeah,
in
yeah.
Taiwan, people were just buying stuff in cash and businesses weren't giving them receipts because they didn't want to pay taxes. And
Hmm.
so the government introduced this thing that every receipt is a lottery ticket. And so that way, every single person is asking for a receipt because they want to win this lottery. And what on top of that, they made like this little app where you can just scan the
And it
get its
notifies you
yen and
when
they
you
give
got
you the
like.
receipt. I was like,
Mhm.
well, this changes everything. Like, so that was a good example of you don't learn that in the textbook, and you're never
Yeah,
going to
but I think
find that
that's
on
very
YouTube.
cultural specific because that kind
At
of thing does not exist in mainland China or Singapore and any other like Sinosphere, like Chinese speaking environment. So you will only even like the word "zaiju" does not really is not really used in mainland
yeah,
China. That's just a Taiwan specific word.
yeah, like, and but that's a good example of something that's like small in the context of everything to do with language learning,
Hmm.
but huge if you're living in Taiwan.
Oh yeah,
like
yeah.
this is such a big deal. So you'll never discover that just by watching YouTube videos. Well, you might, but the algorithm, YouTube algorithm, probably isn't going to show you that. And if it even if it does at the time, you'll be like, oh, this is kind of useless to know. But then you get into the country and you see your friend win like the equivalent of 25 American dollars on this lottery, and you're like, well, wait,
Mhm.
I mean, like let's get me signed up for this.
You got
I'm
you
feeling
got
lucky today.
$25 on that? I got
Yeah,
like the
you
max that
can.
I got was like 200 NT. So that's like what?
I had
That's
no, I had a
like
friend. I had a
what less
friend
than
won
$10.
800 NT a few weeks ago. It was
Wow.
actually Nigel. It
Okay.
was actually
Huh.
Nigel won it, and so
That's
we're like,
nice.
"Oh, dope!
I never got so high.
You're paying for drinks tonight." Like it was yeah, like you got dinner tonight. Uh, yeah, I thought I just think that was such an ingenious solution to the problem because I'm sure the first thing they try to do is just be like, "Hey, just don't do that," and then people are like, "Oh, we're gonna do
Did,
that."
did not work.
like like you have
No,
to do
it's
this.
also incentives to make it better. So that's actually smart way, even though that's also like a business expense turns out to be, right? So because they probably give a lot of money out for that lottery. And that's
Yeah,
like
it's
an actual lottery that works, not like a scam where no one gets it. Like actually allow people get from time to time like extra money, not that much, but they still get some.
well, yeah. They know they have to make it work because like otherwise people will just stop.
Yeah,
they have
correct.
to have to make it really clear that it's super possible uh,
Hmm.
to do this. So I want to talk about some of the different programs you have at LTL. And so I
Hmm.
originally discovered you all through my roommate who met you. He told me he met you at a language exchange, and then
Hmm.
from there it was great because the schools was really close to our apartment. But then I started going through your website, and I was like really impressed with you've basically removed every excuse someone could possibly have uh, to not start learning. So not only do you
Yeah.
have like I noticed you have like the 1 year immersion program, which I think looks really really interesting, really really cool. But then if someone says, "Oh, I can't dedicate a year, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week," you have like other programs. Uh, you have like, okay, well, you can do an hour a day, you can do 4 hours a day. We have this, we have that. If someone comes to you and says, "Oh, I don't have the money," you even have the option of like helping them find
Very
work
high order.
teaching English.
Hmm.
I was like, oh, this is so smart. So can you kind of go through the different kind of programs and things you offer and what kind of things you offer at LTL?
Sure. So essentially, so we have two types of programs that just kind of like open up to endless possibilities, right? So it's full time or part time. So full time is like immersion program, so like 20 hours per week or 30 hours per week for people who are really serious about learning the language. And those are for people who, for example, arrive to Taiwan or to China specific to study language, or for example, to take a vacation off from their work or whatever for, like, let's say a month or 2 weeks and stuff like that, so they can do it. And this works very flexibly. So you can do it as short as 1 week and as long as 1 year. Pretty much after 1 year, you don't really need to continue studying with us anymore because you're already at a really high level at that point. But obviously, people who live and work in Taiwan or in other places, they cannot really like always dedicate like 20 hours per week for the program. So we have also part-time programs like 101s or group classes that are quite popular. I think Nigel also took a morning group class back then, where like it was twice a week for 1.5 hours per time. So that's for people who are all right with taking longer time to learn, but they want to already start and they want to slowly advance there. And so those are the basic ones, and then they open up. So for example, with immersion, you have immersion in different kind of cities. You have homestays. You have homestays that are a bit cheaper, so that's the English teaching ones or the no food ones. Or you have programs that are part time that are specifically for spoken Chinese only and not without reading, which again we discussed is not the best if you want to reach complete fluency in language, but it's a good start that a lot of people find interesting. Or for example, heritage speaker programs, so for people who speak, for example, Cantonese or Taiwanese or some other dialect, so their situation is a bit different from regular students, so they need a special approach, so they prepare for that, HSK programs and whatnot. So we try to, so we didn't just throw out as many programs as possible, but we basically went based on demand. What do people usually inquire about? What do people ask about? Because some people might say like, yeah, I'm good, I want to do group class, blah, blah, but other people will be like, oh, I want to do this program, but the problem is that I'm so and so. So for example, the problem is that I'm a minor, and this might not work for me. So summer camp, or I am under a budget, but I still want to do an immersion program. So something like the city of Beihai, which is a much cheaper, smaller city in China that offers better discounts for specifically those kinds of people. Or people who, for example, why we opened the Shanghai school specifically, because there was this demand that people did back then. We only had Beijing and Chengdu, and people did not necessarily want to go to Beijing because it was more governmental stuff like that, or because it's colder in the winter and stuff like that. So we opened the Shanghai one, and then we opened like Chengdu, Xi'an, Beihai, because each of them gives a different kind of environment, different kind of feel. And the same for Taipei. Taipei is very, very different from many of our other cities that people find also interesting. So one thing that we do that combines the two or the three or whatnot is we do different kind of 3-city programs. So for example, a person can do, let's say if he has, more time, so he can do 2 months in Beijing, then go for 2 months in Shanghai, and then 2 months in Taipei. So that he gets like both North China, South China, and Taiwan, and basically gets like a really good kind of feel for different places. So there's a bunch of stuff that can be done, and we're very flexible in trying out different things, or to offer different things based on who you are as a person, what kind of level you want to reach, and what you can allow yourself to do and stuff like that, like limitations and stuff like that. And we will try to find the best possible program for you, considering all of that.
And the nice thing, because I've done lessons on different platforms, I've had different teachers in the past too. And what I really like working with you guys is you're just so organized, and it seems like such a small thing. But I've had my own private teachers who's like just forget about classes, and I just can't comprehend. I just can't comprehend. I'm like, what do you mean you forget? Like, I'm just confused how they forgot. Oh, like they'll just forget and they'll just not show up to classes. Or I've noticed too, I've noticed like the quality of the teachers you've hired, at least the two I've had, and the ones Nigel had, and the one my other friend who's learned with you've had, all been absolutely excellent. I noticed you kind of have to be careful with some of these private teachers, especially on some of the really big online platforms, because you'll see some teachers charge like a very, very low rate, and unsurprisingly, if they're only charging X amount of dollars, you could only it's almost like common sense, but you can only really expect X amount of dollars in quality usually. And what I mean by quality is just the likelihood that they'll be prepared ahead of time, or that they'll like know what to teach in general. And I found you kind of just want to avoid teachers who are doing it as like a part-time job on top of their normal job, because there's a good chance they'll just disappear. There's a good
Yeah,
chance
correct.
they'll be like, oh, I can make X amount of dollars per hour teaching. Oh, I'll try teaching a couple hours on a Saturday, and then, but if they're not really, you really need to find teachers who are super super patient above anything else. And because you gotta be, if you're sitting there listening to me read for 3.5 4 hours, you gotta be a patient person.
Patient, yeah.
And you want to really be working with teachers who like genuinely care about teaching. And so that's why like I definitely recommend like LTL to anyone that I come across, because yeah, theoretically you might be able to find quote unquote cheaper options, but it's honest, like I've tried going down that route a couple of years ago. It's not worth it. It's just not worth the time, especially if you're trying to do something like the programs you offer where you're finding the homestay for the person, you're doing all the travel arrangements, you do, like that's worth such the amount of headache for that. Trying to do it in English, it would be worth it. The amount of headache trying to organize all that in a language you don't know how to speak yet too, it's just absolutely no brainer. So that's what I've really liked with you, and I've really appreciated how like flexible y'all have been, where it's like it's a lot easier to find times with you versus if you just find a private teacher on your own. Like their schedule is they only have 24 hours in the day, and so their schedule is their schedule, versus working through you. You've made it really easy for me to like do like 20 hours a week of lessons, and like reschedule classes. Like for example, Chinese New Year's, I've rescheduled like 3 or 4 classes. Made it really easy for that too. So all in all, like I think it's a really great program. So if people want to know more about LTL, what's the best? Where should they go? Like, what's your website, or what's the best like first steps to learn more?
So obviously we have our website, ltl-school.com. So that's our main hub that includes also information about all of our different programs in different cities, online, whatnot, and also a bunch of plethora of information that we give out for free, which is just information for studying Chinese, because that's a thing that we were trying to do throughout the years, is basically offer as many resources as possible for people who have an interest in the language, in Chinese, in other language as well, to further improve themselves, even if they do not specifically are looking right now for a study program, right? So, for example, one thing that I've been working on, I was wanting to mention that is the Chinese name generator. So you go to a web page that we have, and you enter your full name, so last name, first name, last name, and we developed the system that will recognize based on that exactly give you a unique Chinese name. So that means not like, for example, I'm Alexander, so it's not going to give me a Yali Shandai. It's going to give me an actual Chinese name with
Where is this? Where is this?
Just you can Google LTL Chinese name generator. It's in one of the pages. You can Google that. It's a little bit of a work in progress, because we want to, so there is a human hand that checks every name to make sure that it makes sense and stuff like that. Because we don't want it to just like throw out randomness or stuff. I want each name to be an actual real unique name. And but the problem is that sometimes people give a name that's like, for example, so this is, you always kind of need to expect mistakes there. So if someone, for example, puts in the first name, he puts his first and last name and then puts a dot at the last name, then the
story of my life as a software engineer, my
exactly.
friend.
Or someone actually once entered their full Chinese name in there, I guess maybe to test the system, like in Chinese. So then the system has to recognize that's his Chinese name and not to return gibberish and stuff like that. So that's why a human hand is important there. So we create a bunch of those kind of stuff people's benefits there on the site. And then obviously they can contact us, and we always have a person who is available to discuss things, programs, or just general help. Our Twitter or Instagram is also very active there with discussing even people contact us for even things that are not related to studying Chinese specifically at our school, but rather just the questions about, for example, they were asking for how their name is in Chinese, and they created the name generator, or they were asking about the HSK, and then we have an HSK section, and so on.
Yeah, that's great. I'm gonna be trying that name generator right after, because I've been like hemming and hawing about making a Chinese name for a while. Right now, like if I need to sign something really quick, I use like Jian Mu Shi for James. But like that's lame. I know that's lame. I gotta like
and that's not the Chinese name, that's the thing.
Yeah. That's like lazy foreigner name. And you know what? If someone who's a foreigner goes by that, yeah, I'm throwing shade at you. You should get a better one. You should get a better one. Yeah, I'm gonna definitely poke through that. That's great to know. And the email list, I can attest. I'm subscribed to the email list, and normally I hate email newsletters, but I read every single one of the ones you guys send out, and they're solid. There's like some deep cut, like Chinese language learning tips, because a lot of these Chinese language learning tip email newsletters are kind of similar, and they'll be like, "Oh, did you know in China they don't say apple, they say
rice."
I'm like, yeah, in China they eat rice with chopsticks. Whoa! I'm like, okay, dude, like, like that's like you can tell it's just like mailed in, outsourced email news marketing, like email marketing. That's probably someone who doesn't know anything about Chinese culture just churning out these emails. But the LTL ones, I think I saw the last email newsletter. We're talking about TV shows, Chinese TV shows that are good to watch. And like, oh, I clicked through there. I was like, oh, that's cool. Or there's one about Chinese language learning apps, one where you can like read magazine articles. I'm like, oh,
I think that's the chairman's bow, or either chairman's bow or Do Chinese. Both of them do that.
Yeah.
So we actually work with a lot of different kind of resources like apps, because we review a bunch of those apps, and in many of those they also have like LTL students and LTL participants. They also get discounts for them. So there's a bunch that we recommend there. So if you're looking for apps for studying Chinese, there's a plethora of knowledge there on the website.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thanks so much for your time, Alex. Can stay on the call because I'll upload a little bit. But thanks so much for your time. It was really great talking to you. I'm excited to share with everyone. And if anyone wants to know more about LTL, just type in what was the URL again?
www.ltl-school.com. Or you can write LTL School and you should find it on Google immediately.
Yeah, it'll be on Google. Okay. Thanks again, Alex.